I would like to call the regular council meeting of November the 22nd to order. We are honored to gather on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nations. And I think everybody is aware that the province has implemented an order as it relates to fuel restrictions. It's 30 liters per day for non-essential vehicles, and I'm asking the residents of Cumberland to please be aware of that, because that could jeopardize our fire department and our emergency services. So please be aware that we need to make sure that they can get to where they need to go in an emergency. And we are not out of the emergency yet. Weather patterns seem to indicate another storm is inbound, with much of the province currently under strain. We need to do our part to support the recovery as well as not put any added pressure on the system. So thank you very much to all the residents, and we'll keep you informed as it comes forward. So thank you. Now we'll go on to the approval of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes.
Move adoption. Second.
All in favor? Carried. Receipt of committee minutes.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried. No delegations, no unfinished business, no correspondence. Reports that council will receive development permit 2607 Maryport Avenue.
Move receipt. Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. The first report this evening is the development permit for 2607 Maryport. So the village has received an application for a residential infill development permit to allow the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit at 2607 Maryport. So the purpose of this report is to request a referral to the Advisory Planning Commission for comment. The property owners of the subject property wish to convert an existing accessory building into a 479 square foot ADU at the rear of the property but side. Earlier this year in May, council approved a development variance permit on the subject property, which allows the owner to convert the existing garage that extends into the front yard by 3.1 feet into an ADU. The application and supporting documents comply with all zoning bylaw requirements with the exception, and development permit guidelines, with the exception of a vegetative screen between the ADU and neighboring property. Staff will work with the applicant to demonstrate compliance with this guideline prior to council's consideration for approval. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Melina. I did have a look at the property because I couldn't figure out where this ADU was going to go. Is it going directly behind the one that's fronting on the street?
So it will be where the garage is now. So they're converting it, but adding on
So is there going to be one or two?
just one.
Oh, I thought this was a second application for one behind the one that
No.
they already got the approval, because I thought that one was already approved. Okay.
Yeah, so this one was a little bit funny. It stuck out just past
Yeah.
the primary dwelling, so they had to get a variance. And they were a little bit cautious about that being denied, so they did that first, and now they're coming
I see.
for approval for the ADU. That's the second application.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I enjoyed the cross section of the pervious paving. That was nice. Yeah.
That was a nice addition.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would like to see more of that for sure.
More pervious paving, more permeable areas.
I'll move that council refer the application 2021-07 DP for a development permit on property described as Lot A, Block 35, DL 24, Plan VIP 3268, 2607 Maryport Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, recommend that council receive development permit and development variance permit 2779 to Ulverston Avenue, referral to APC.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, so the second application is for a residential infill development permit as well as a development variance permit. The applicant also, to change the use from the existing accessory building into a dwelling unit. The structure must comply with current setbacks in the zoning bylaw, hence the variance application. And the applicant also wishes to bring the siting of an existing second accessory building, which is a shed, into compliance with the zoning bylaw as well. So for the development permit, the property owner of 2779 Ulverston wants to convert an existing accessory building into the ADU. The structure was built as a garage/workshop in 1996. The application and supporting documents meet all of the guidelines and zoning requirements with the exception of the rear and side setback. In the R1A zone, accessory dwelling units are required to have a 1.5 meter setback from the rear and side. And the applicant is requesting a 1.3 meter setback. And the other, sorry, as well, the EV plug will be addressed at time of the building permit. Currently, the applicant hasn't shown on the back lane, which would require the car to be parked in a public right-of-way, so we'll work with the applicant at building permit to move that. For the development variance permit, the existing garage, like I said, was built in 96 by a previous property owner, and the current application to convert the structure into the ADU triggered the need to seek the variance for the side and rear setback. The applicant is also seeking to vary the rear and side setbacks of the existing shed. The rear setback would be varied to as close as 0.03 meters, and the side setback would be varied to 0. The site survey shows that the eave of the covered area encroaches onto the neighboring property, but the encroachment is a civil issue, and the village would only be able to vary the setback to the property line.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Actually, yeah, about the shed and the encroachment. If there is no agreement between the neighbors, are we sort of giving a certification without actual, I guess, proper title as to the encroachment?
That's a good question. I mean, we would be okaying it to the property line, and then it would be up to the property owners to seek a private easement if it was an issue. I see what you're saying, though, if it's sort of like a nod that we're okaying the easement. That's something that I can look into.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just for referral tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Sullivan, did you have a question? No. Councillor Sproul? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thank you. I have no problem with the, I like the fact that they're trying to legalize that shed. I like that the sheds are at a 0 setback from the lane. I think it adds character to the lane, so I'm happy with that. But I'm a bit concerned about the impermeable area on the lot and the lot coverage. So on page 53,
Yeah.
it shows the first map doesn't show it, but the second map shows a large covered area beside the accessory dwelling unit. So that would be in the calculation of lot coverage, yeah?
I just to clarify, I think that the line that the applicant's drawn in is just for a fence, and the covered area is only that small little line there, which the applicant from their landscape plan, they're going to put the recycling and garbage in that little square on the inside of the fence for
Okay.
the tenant.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and I trust that you guys will sort out the lot coverage.
Yeah, so on the site plan, which is in the draft development permit, it does show the lot coverage at just under the permitted, so it's at 39.6%. So we
Okay.
did have them actually do an updated site survey prior to bringing it to council.
Okay, okay,
Because
awesome.
it did look tight from
It
site
looks
visit,
very
so-
tight, yeah.
Yeah.
Squeeze it in.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome, thank you.
Okay, what is your pleasure, council?
I'll move that council refer the application 2021-19 DV for development variance permit and 2021-12 DP for development on the property described as Lot 5 DL24 Plan VIP 6793 2779 Elverston Avenue to the Advisory Planning Commission for a recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, that council receive the low-income recreation program eligibility criteria and regional pilot of Leisure for Everyone Accessibility Program report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so this report suggests has two recommendations, and the first is following up on the work that Council endorsed last year on the low-income program that we adopted called FAIR, the Financial Assistance in Recreation Program, to extend that one step further, and that's grow the existing collaboration we have with the Comox Valley Regional District and expand that to the City of Courtenay and Town of Comox. And so what staff are suggesting is a one-year pilot project. I guess in the recreation world we love our acronyms. This one's LEAP. And I would have to even refer here, I can't keep track of them all, between LEAP and RAC and FAIR and PLAY. But the intention of LEAP is to expand this to low-income youth to enable access throughout the valley. So, for example, a youth going to school at Vanier or something would be able to go to the link under the same pass that they could attend our rec center or Comox's for that matter. And so that's the first recommendation, is to join that collaborative approach, and then following that one-year pilot, based on recommendations that the CVRD board has already endorsed, as well as City of Comox, it's looked to continue to build off these types of collaborative passes, potentially growing beyond low income, but trying to take a measured approach and understand financial impacts. And then the second piece is both for FAIR and LEAP, should we look to proceed with that, is to change the threshold. Right now, we are using, and again, let me just quickly refer because we got more acronyms coming up. Right now, we are using the low income cutoff. And that rate is slightly the threshold we would reduce and make more applicants eligible for the program, essentially. And this is also to be consistent with the other recreation departments around the valley. And so that would be moving to LIM, the low income measure. So LIM and LICO and LEAP. Any questions? Unless it's acronym related, and then I might have to scramble and try and...
Councillor Sproul?
Yeah, it's not so much a question as a comment. It looks to me that the second one would allow more people access to recreation services. So, yeah, it's a win-win, I would say.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, just really excited to see this. Yeah, and opening up there, lowering the threshold definitely would guarantee more uptake, and that's what we're looking for, is more people involved in recreation. Yeah, thanks. Lots of acronyms. Very good ones too, actually. Topical.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, we've been working on this for a little while now, a few years at the regional district, and so I'm happy to see it come forward here. The goal was to have a universal pass for low-income families, and so lowering the threshold is good. We'll get more people, give more people access, and the other goal that we're working toward is to have uniform application for all the recreation departments. So those people that are low income and looking to get a recreation pass only have to do the process once and not have to repeat that process at each recreation facility. So that's the goal there. And yes, we're just starting with youth under age 18 right now, but hopefully that will be expanded after this year pilot and apply to everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just to that point, we are looking at having one application form for all the programs across the valley.
Yes, that's the goal. Increase access. Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Brown?
Yeah, that was my question, was about the application process and how complicated that is, and trying to keep that as low barrier as possible. And then I don't suppose there's another, I know there's another acronym, but I can't remember which one it is, that's another income level, but I'm not sure it's it allows for more access than this one is. So I'm just, maybe you know, is the limb is better than LICO, but is it better than the B, the one that starts with a B? B something or other?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not super familiar with this. I've
Yeah.
been following the lead with the other rec departments who have done a substantial amount of research into this.
Yeah, I
and,
couldn't actually get through the definitions of how they all worked myself, so, so that's okay. Just recognizing that it is a pretty, like, family of four, 50,000, I don't know how they're even living in an appropriate housing situation right now, so, if there is a way to get that, those thresholds to a better place, that's great. But let's do the year and see how it goes.
Clayton?
Just to add a little bit to that as well, this would be the type of initiative that would also be reviewed through the recreation, culture, and arts strategy that'll be undertaken. This is the type of program that we'd want to look and how does that fit? What are the best practices? I mean, certainly regional based is best practice, and but that would be we'd get some more feedback from the community when we begin that process there and seek that information. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for all your work. It's much needed in the valley, this program, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of uptake on it. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Council?
That council direct staff to change the income eligibility for Cumberland's Financial Assistance in Recreation FAIR program from low income cutoff, LICO, to low income measure, LIM, and that staff implement a 1-year pilot of the Leisure for Everyone accessibility program, LEAP, in partnership with the town of Comox, City of Courtenay, and Comox Valley Regional District, CVRD, to extend financial access recreation benefits to youth regardless of place of residence using the low income measure, LIM, for criteria.
Seconded. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the Perseverance Watershed Initiative report for information.
Your receipt.
All in favor? Carried.
All right, thank you. Is the mic sound on?
Yep.
Yep, okay, awesome. I'll stand up for this presentation. I've got a PowerPoint here for the Perseverance Watershed Initiative. So, following on Council's direction last month, this report is an opportunity to bring this project forward that we've been working on for several months now into the public realm. And certainly given its importance and kind of the current status around resource management and flood protection and all things related to kind of our ecosystem health, I think this is quite timely. So the Perseverance Watershed Initiative was first championed by the Cumberland Community Forest Society and considered about a year ago by Council directly in response to, I guess what we were kind of calling some chasing flagging tape issues, and that was at V092. So the impetus of it was one specific proposed harvesting by Mosaic Forest Management, but ultimately what it's about is a new approach to watershed protection in the Perseverance Creek Basin that's grounded in a long-term science-based approach as opposed to that case-by-case way of doing things. So what we're looking at is a collaboration between a private forest management company, Mosaic, the Village of Cumberland, and then of course our conservation partner, the Cumberland Community Forest Society, who's provided tremendous leadership on this. And so, just quickly for background, this is a slide of the watershed from perhaps a slightly different angle. Oh, thanks, Rachel. Might be easier to see. Just to give a quick overview of the sub-basin of Comox Lake in which we get our drinking water supply from. So overall, it's about 2,200 hectares in total. The high elevation, almost 1,000 meters at the top of Cumberland Creek, which is its own kind of sub-basin. 4 surface water reservoirs connected by creeks down to one intake at Henderson, and then Allen Lake with a separate intake, and then of course it flows into the community. The 2,200 hectares, about 3/4 of that is owned by private managed forest companies, and then the remainder 25% is managed by the village, either the watershed protection lands or Cumberland Community Forest Park down in the lower stretches of the basin. So as I mentioned earlier, the impetus behind the project was a proposed forest harvesting block by Mosaic back, going on more than a year ago. And since that point in time, staff have worked quite closely with Mosaic to try and better understand the risks, and then where there was mutual agreement to implement some mitigation strategies. So there were some positive outcomes of those discussions. I think it was a very collaborative approach, and we were appreciative of Mosaic's team on working with us. The two, to summarize, the two outcomes that we saw was, one, there was a block boundary amendment that they implemented adjacent to one of the creeks that flows into Allen Lake. Those familiar, it's around the Teapot Trail. And then the second was around road construction and hauling. And so working with their engineers, we were able to implement a number of measures on a road network that includes Village Road that we hadn't been maintaining to a standard that we thought was appropriate given the use. So yeah, there certainly were some benefits to water quality risk in working with Mosaic on that. And what grew out of that, or in parallel process, kind of this two-pronged approach, was this Perseverance Watershed Initiative. And so, yeah, in conjunction to those discussions, working with the Community Forest Society, we established this more holistic approach, and that's what we're calling PWI. And it's this taking a much more innovative approach to some of the long-standing issues. And the current status, I'll get into this a little bit more, but we've got a draft terms of reference. We're working currently with the Comox First Nation to engage them and gather their feedback, at which time we would bring forward with their feedback and input a final terms of reference that kind of guides how this partnership work is proceeding. And so, what is the Perseverance Watershed Initiative? It's basically, we could summarize it as two things. One, it's developing a strategy for integrated watershed planning and management in support of the long-term sustainability of the watershed. And then secondly, it's leveraging resources in order to implement that strategy. And so in order to do so, we're basically looking at 4 building blocks. And all these have been initiated, and we're starting to look at all of them, but starting with the first one, which is quite critical given the village has a real strong understanding of how our water system works from an engineered asset perspective. Once it flows into the pipes and the reservoirs, even our dam infrastructure, we have a really good understanding of, but how the watershed works as a hydraulic system, starting height of land and understanding, impacts of snow melt or extreme weather and climate change. And in addition to over a century of industrial resource extraction, ongoing recreational use, there's all these layered things that we don't have nearly as good a grasp on how that impacts management of the water resource. And so the first thing is watershed information and science, the first building block. And this is about really enhancing our knowledge about the watershed as a hydraulic system and how it functions as a natural asset before it flows into the pipes. The second piece is then taking that foundational level information and doing some watershed-centric land use planning, integrating all those different values across the landscape, including those of the private managed forest landowners and other parties. With the ultimate goal being understanding what areas are best needed to protect. What are those critical locations on that landscape, be it wetlands or areas of high hydrologic connectivity, is it creeks, that then we can target protection efforts, working of course with the Community Forest Society and others, and setting ourselves up to leverage future resources available. The third one is watershed awareness and stewardship. So being able to tell this story to the community and other groups who are interested. It's a complex system. It's, working here 10 years, I think I've just finally wrapped my head around all the different names used for all the different creeks and reservoirs. Is it number 2? Is it Bucket Lake? It's maybe we need acronyms for that, actually. That just came to mind. We don't need more acronyms. But at the end of the day, it's about being able to share with the public and build that awareness and ultimately have people recognize that resource and be stewards of it. And then lastly, it's about process alignment. Simultaneous to this, there's a whole bunch of really good projects going on around watershed protection in the valley, be it many of them led by the regional district, but it's about how do we, as opposed to them operating kind of in their own silos, but bundling them together, recognizing the Perseverance Basin really is this collective resource for the whole valley, of which our water system is of course very much vital to the health of our community. So that last piece is about tying together all these things, and this is some work that's already been initiated through engaging some of these other partners and organizations. So where we're at in the process, the terms of reference is in a draft format, as I mentioned earlier, actively engaging and working with Comox First Nation and giving them an opportunity to inform us how they think this could work for them or how they would like to play a role in it. And so confirming those partners and roles, and Mosaic's scheduled for a delegation to council later this fall, an opportunity to hear from them, not only on this, but other topics of mutual interest. The planning process is also underway, background literature review, understanding watershed protection science, understanding those what those gaps are in information and putting together data collection plans. And then building off that, working to implement. So whether that's gathering data, whether that's applying for or starting to work towards assembling resources to protect lands, educate the public, and continue to work with other partners. And then the last piece, what's really important, I think, about this is talking about leveraging those resources. Is the whole intention behind this is to align with some other initiatives that the province has underway. And so this is things like the watershed security strategy, the Clean BC roadmap to 2030, and climate change adaptation and impacts, the BC Healthy Watersheds Initiative. So these are programs either already in place or in their infancy and being established, that the whole idea is we can align with those and then seek out resources to bring into our community and help position us for success. So I'm available for questions. I think I'm sure there's a few other things related to PWI that I've missed. This is the third presentation on PWI today, and I think each one keeps getting a little bit faster. I don't know, maybe I'm talking faster, but I'm here. Let me know if
Okay, we'll
anything
go
further.
around the table and see if people have questions. Councillor Sullivan?
I'm just excited to see this report coming out. The timeliness is obvious, and the more education for everybody and the better we can protect this watershed, it's better for everyone. So yeah, thanks, Tim.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, I agree. Very happy to see this come forward, and thanks for your work on this, Kevin. I think that it's important that we are moving toward eco-asset management and recognizing the value that the surrounding forest plays for our drinking water system. The filtration, the detention of water, reducing runoff, all those things are really critical to us having a good, resilient water system. And I think many municipalities are moving toward that. The issue I see is that that forest policy is still quite far behind both the Forest and Range Act, which applies to Crown land, and the Private Managed Forest Act even more so. Myself and many members of council have been participating in modernizing forest policy sessions that have been occurring. This is mostly for Crown lands legislation changes and the private mass forest lands changes. They don't seem to be taking any feedback on that until 2023, I think is what they were saying. But certainly this is the way we need to go, and I'm happy to see that Mosaic is voluntarily participating in this with us. I would like to see it be more than voluntary, though. I would like to see the province make those changes where they do have to consult with municipalities, where there is better protection for streams and riparian areas, where we talk about, different chemicals being used on the land after it's been clear cut, that could affect our drinking water system. So more regulation around those specific things is good, and looking at the ecological values, which I don't think are currently considered when they do their logging plans. So as well, a comprehensive plan so that across companies, if one lot is beside another lot, that those those combined cuts are being taken into account in a comprehensive plan of how it will affect the watershed. So, yeah, all those things are going to be discussed, I think, in the coming years, and hoping to see some change. But this is a really good place for us to be, and educating the public on what we're doing and how our watershed functions is a good place to start. So thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, thank you for all your work on this, and thanks to CCFS and the other partners as well. Yeah, I'm happy it's coming forward. I think there's a huge opportunity to educate the public around it. I know there was a lot of concern when people heard that there would be logging up there, not just that they were going to lose a trail, but that it was associated with our watershed and the worry around that. So this is great. I think it's really innovative work, and it will position us very well moving forward with the province, not just for those grants, but in a lobbying for, as Councillor Kettler was saying, lobbying for better practices in the future, near future, like now, like right now. And given the situation around the province, we know how important and how hard those forests work for us. So that's just really important for us. And I think, we've been trying to move towards natural asset management for a long time, and this is a massive step for us in that direction. Just understanding how the watershed functions. Like you showed that slide with all the waterways, that's a lot of waterways, and that's a lot of clear cuts around those waterways, and I don't know much about how any of them function either. So I think that would be really good for all of us. I'm wondering, I do actually have a question, which is around, we've talked before about creating a fire break between the Cumberland Forest and the next whatever block, to protect us from fire. So wondering if we can introduce that into these conversations, or if that is part of the conversation already. And then also the herbicide use as well, because I know they spray for deciduous trees. So is that part of it, or could that be a future conversation? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, so through the mayor, I would say that in terms of integrated land management planning, managing for fire risk would be a consideration or a factor. In terms of fire break, I'm not sure whether that's a very maintenance intensive process. I'm not an expert in this, but I think it's more about managing for fuel supply. And these are conversations that have already started, I think, to a point earlier made. There's a lot of cross-property boundary issues in here. We even know in our lands, the 228 hectares that we own in the upper watershed, there's areas that are long overdue for a thinning treatment, but they cross over onto Mosaic lands, and they're best approached in partnership. And a lot of that work is intended to be reducing that wildfire risk, reducing the fuel loads on site. So I think we would want to look at the basin as a whole and prioritize where that kind of fire protection planning fits. The second piece is around silviculture work, and this to a comment that came from Councillor earlier during these discussions. We did have proposed and Mosaic accepted a conversation around silviculture practices and how that fits in chemical spraying in the watershed. So that we haven't specifically spoken about that item and gathered more information, but Mosaic was absolutely willing to consider that as part of this kind of more holistic approach to land use planning and protection.
Thanks.
Councillor Sproul?
Yes, thanks for the report. I'm very heartened to see all this and to see what's happening, because with the lands being part of the E&N land grant, I didn't think that we had any kind of sway with the private managed forest lands, and it's clear that a lot of progress has been made. Sorry, forgot. A lot of progress has been made in communications with the private forest managers. I didn't think any of this was possible, but it shows that you don't get what you don't ask for, so that's great. This is a very unique watershed. Not only does it supply us with water for free, in that it's gravity that takes it down to our taps, and that's a unique situation. And there's so much life, so much type of living things that live in this watershed. So I feel quite hopeful for the future. This land has been logged at least 2 or 3 times already, but it will, if things slow down, then it'll get a chance maybe to grow back and grow better trees. So this is a positive thing. Thank you.
Yes, I will echo everybody's comments and say that during these meetings with the province, I have at times wondered how they can come up with their decisions on how they're treating the land. I find that I have more questions than when we started. I thought we would be further along than we are, but we're not. The control is still in the private managed forest lands, in what happens and what does not happen. I know they're working cooperatively with us at this point to some degree, but we need a surety, and that's not coming at this point as far as I'm concerned. There's still a lot of movement that has to be done to protect our drinking water. And we were always so proud of the quality of our drinking water in the village for many, many years, and I think that we need to retain that pride. It only takes one accident for something to happen that they assure us will never happen, and we have lived through that in the past, and we need to make sure that we are absolutely protected in our drinking water. So I look forward to working with the other partners on this, the regional district, the First Nations, and Community Forest Society. I think together we can get solutions to our issues, and I look forward to the final draft. Thank you. Next, we're going into bylaws. That council receive the 2021-25 financial plan amendment bylaw report for information.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, good evening. So this amendment bylaw does come to you, well, it should come to you earlier in the year for your first amendment. And that would have been your projects that got carried over from the 2020 year to your 2021 year. But just due to other circumstances, it's being added to this amendment. So there's just one amendment this year to your 2021 financial plan. So This report outlines your amendments to your adopted financial plan for 2021, the ones that are based on your council resolutions that were made throughout the year, your projects that were carried forward from last year to this year, and also the number of COVID restart funded projects that you approved throughout the year. That's also in this. We also have some recommended amendments from staff, and I'll go through those a little bit later there. You have one report attached to this, to your council report, and it is, it reconciles your adopted financial plan to your amended financial plan that you're considering in tonight's meeting. So your first column of that report shows what you adopted, what you approved back in January. And then the second column is all of the different amendments from the different motions and everything. And then the third column reconciles that and tells you what the bylaw that you're approving or considering tonight totals. The second attachment to this report is all of the details of the projects that we're requesting to carry over from 2020 to 2021. And then the third attachment is the details of all the COVID projects that you've already approved through resolution, and it's just giving you a good detail of that. So moving throughout the report, I've listed all of the council motions that you've made throughout the year that the amendments are built on. And then we move through those motions down to just page 5 of your agenda. And that's where staff have recommended some amendments. So there's a couple of amendments there that just from previous decisions that you've made that you're aware of for the watershed and the restructure. And we've talked about your carry forward projects as well. Then we also received 2 grants during the year, the $169,000 for the Lake Park waterfront upgrades and just under $19,000 for your active transportation multimodal plan. And you also received just $229,000 for the development modernization project for the Planning and Development Department. But of course, that's just in RFP stage at the moment, so that's in your 2022 financial plan, so you didn't need to amend your financial plan for that. But it is underway and it's moving along. We have some minor reallocations between capital and operation, and then also you have some property tax deficits that I'm asking you to transfer from your general financial stabilization reserve. And it's just totaling just under $42,000. So that's a combination of some tax refunds that we had to give during the year for supplementary assessments, and then also the difference between what we estimated the tax growth to be to what was actual. Then finally, we have some reserve transfers based on the surplus, reserve and surplus policy. So some annual surpluses fell to your accumulated surplus, and that will put those over the optimum balance in your reserve policy. So I'm asking them to cascade into your stabilization reserves. And so tonight I'm just asking you to read the bylaw for your first 3 readings. Thank you.
Questions from members of council? Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is the place I should be asking about this or later in the financial plan bylaw. But I was looking again at the urban forest management plan, and which would contain the tree bylaw, urban tree bylaw. And we have it in the budget for 2023 for $15,000, but only with a grant, only if we get a grant. And I really think that this is something that deserves more attention than that. I think we've mentioned it a number of times in council, and it really struck a chord for me again during our budget process when we had the young woman asking about climate change and what we're doing for climate change. And I think that having an urban tree bylaw would actually make a big difference as far as climate mitigation. We know that urban trees help detain water, help absorb water. So there's flood mitigation capacity, and in the summer, the shade, it helps reduce temperatures. So I think just having urban trees could be a big step toward our climate mitigation. And it's only $15,000. I'm wondering, does COVID restart funding fall within, or the tree bylaw, can that fall within the requirements of the restart funding? And do we have enough of that left to apply it? And can we apply it in the 2022 year?
Yeah, so there's, through the mayor, that's a few different steps, I think, that we'd have to kind of consider to make that move. So first, we have work plans that you've got to look at to move it to 2022. So that would be your first step. So I think that if that's really important to council, we would need to take that back and come back to you for that. COVID funding, it doesn't probably sound like it could be COVID, but if that's another thing, if that's really important to council, we could come back with some funding sources for that. I think you do have some funds in your host amenity reserve.
Yeah, because it is just that one-time
Yeah.
funding, so
That's
it's not
right.
an ongoing, it's something
Yeah.
that we would need to be taxing for if we could find those funds.
Yeah, so really, the funding side is okay. Moving it from 2023 to 2022 would probably require some extra looking at. Yeah, and then, of course, we should talk about it in the 2022 budget process.
So,
but
yeah, so we'll save the conversation for later in the agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So, council like to make the motion then?
That council give first, second, and third reading to the 2021 to 2025 financial plan amendment bylaw, number 1161, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the council procedure bylaw amendment report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Find my report within all these financial bylaws. So this is the third time this council procedure bylaw has been to council. And at the last time we brought it to committee of the whole, and there were a couple minor changes that council asked for. And the first being where council needs to hold a electronic meeting, a wholly electronic meeting in emergency circumstances. We've changed the notice requirement to enable council to approve the electronic meeting at that meeting once we've gone electronic. And that would be in emergency circumstances only. And you'll see with the definition of what an emergency is, basically where there's any emergency situation, fire, explosion, or force of nature, so that could include weather, that we could hold an emergency council meeting fairly quickly. I have also included a statement that a requirement the corporate officer must make a reasonable effort to notify all council members and the public in advance of the meeting. So that provides some flexibility, but and I mean the idea here is to not to enable enough that it could be abused. So we just make sure that we're having that notice to all members of council and to the public is pretty crucial. So here it's a requirement to make best efforts to do so in the circumstances that are presented in an emergency. So the second change was to allow 2 members of council to attend an electronic meeting and to limit those reasons for health or for travel, and you'll see that has been included in the bylaw. There wasn't a reason for the travel that would, I think it was a little too challenging to include that in a bylaw. So I made the requirement that just the member is not in the Comox Valley region can attend the electronic meeting, or for illness or other personal health reasons. And the third change was where we have a closed portion of a regular council meeting that starts at 4. We require 1 week notification to council members. And in the bylaw itself, it says 6 days, because you don't count the day of the meeting, nor the day before. So it works out to about 7 days when you count in real time, not statutory time. So, and we're hoping to have first reading of the bylaw, and which would follow with a public notice with 2 publications in a newspaper to let the public know.
Any
Thank you.
member of council have any questions? Someone like?
Actually, do we have to put it in the newspaper, or can we put it in Currently Cumberland, where it will actually reach the residents of Cumberland?
The community charter requires 2 publication weekly in 2 consecutive weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
so we can't, right,
We
'cause
can't
it's a
do it in
monthly.
courier. So sometimes
Even though they say we don't have to do, yeah, anyway.
the new bill 26, when that comes into effect, we can look at that if that's something locally, but I think that's something we can discuss when the time comes, and we'll see where the record is at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. The publication dates with Currently Cumberland would be a bit challenging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't think of that.
Okay. Someone like to make the motion?
I'll move the council give first, second, and third reading to the 2021-2025 financial plan amendment bylaw number. Oops, that's the wrong one.
Yeah.
Sorry, the
only
council
one.
give first reading to council procedure amendment bylaw number 1153, 2021, and direct staff to give public notice of the proposed amendments to the council procedure bylaw.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Carried. Next, that council receive the 2022-26 financial plan, 2022 utility and frontage tax bylaws report.
Move receipt.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, so I'm back. So tonight will be your first considerations of your financial plan, your utility, and your frontage tax bylaws. So the recommendation is for your first reading of your financial plan bylaw, your 2022 to 2026, and then the first 3 readings of your utility rates amendments and your frontage tax bylaws. Okay, so the 2022 financial plan bylaw includes all council-approved expenditures, transfers, and revenues required for current service levels and strategic priority goals. The frontage tax amendment bylaw includes parcel taxes that will generate the revenues required in the plan to replace all your underground utility assets. And then the utility rates amendment bylaws include the fees that will generate the revenues in the plan to operate the utility services. Council added some budgets during the committee of the whole meeting. Then we took the proposed plan with those additions to the public for further comment at the Village Hall meeting on November 15th. And we have since received 1 written email with questions in it. And then we also, so we've summarized that email in this report. And then there was also some questions and comments during the open house, which council was present for, but I have also added a summary of those comments in the report. One bit of information that was asked during that night that I didn't have an answer for, so I just thought I'd highlight that to you out of the information given, is in 2021 there were 1,305 homeowner grants claimed in the 2021 year. So there, in 2021, there's 1,670 residential properties. So of course, not all properties are eligible for the homeowner grant. So 1,305 of those were claimed.
Sorry, what was the total number again?
1,305. Oh, the total number of properties, residential properties, is 1,670. That would have been eligible.
Yeah.
Or possible. And yeah, so I can review some of these, or I can answer some questions later on about those comments, but they're in the report there for your review. And so then there's also the choice for council to make some changes to the attached bylaws if they wish tonight. And so just at the bottom of page 4, I've outlined kind of the process that you would need to follow to make those changes tonight. And so you can go there if you'd like to make the changes, or I can help you through them. But I won't go through them at the moment unless you ask. And then you can also delay the bylaw readings process into the new year if you'd like staff to come back with more information about anything in the plans or the bylaws. So also you have an opportunity to look at your tax policies that are in the financial plan bylaw. In particular, you may want to look at your distribution of your property taxes among the property classes. The only thing I would recommend tonight, though, is that just given the fact that we just received the preview roll, and it was showing actually for market value assessment increases for Cumberland, it was 34% for residential properties. So that's a very significant increase. So my thoughts are that you might be better off holding off on your distribution discussion, and I could bring a report back once the completed roll is received. And that way you can take that opportunity once you understand the how the relationship between these huge increases, and you'll also have the Comox Valley Regional District requisition amounts at that point, how those huge increases have impacted those requisitions and that kind of stuff. At that point, you might be in a better position to actually kind of analyze what those impacts would be if you played with those distributions. And then you can always then at that point just amend your financial plan, and then I can use that for building your tax rates, because that's really what that distribution is really about. It's not about whether or not your tax revenue increase needs to be there or not. It's just how you distribute that. And so I think you're better off waiting for your completed roll. But council can also do that tonight. Also, throughout the report, I have given you the overviews of the impacts proposed in the plan, and with all the documents attached. But nothing's really changed since your committee of the whole meeting and the information that went forward to the public meeting. So I won't review those again with you, other than to say that your impact on an average single-family household is about $221 for the year with this financial plan bylaw. The only difference there is that the frontage tax rates increase slightly because the growth that I had originally estimated just decreased a little bit from what I originally thought. And then your multifamily type unit would increase by about $173 a month, which is a little bit less than what you were provided at the Village Hall meeting. And that's, you had your slight increase to the frontage tax that we just talked about, but then you also had a decrease to your water consumption variable rate for the multifamily, just because we had some updated water consumption information to be able to do that with. And then the commercial property with the median assessment value would be $375 increase, and that's just the slight increase over the Village Hall meeting because of the frontage tax. Again, you have some different reports attached to the council report that you saw at the Village Hall meeting. And you have a municipal tax increase of 5.39%. Utility fees are 3.92%, and your frontage taxes are 7.56%. And I can answer some questions now for you, if you'd like.
Okay. Questions from council members? Councillor Brown, Councillor Kettler.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about the working forest rate. So do you expect that that will be impacted by the assessment?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So when I looked at the preview roll, and of course it's still at the preview, and you don't really
Yeah.
calculate your taxes till you get your revised roll, but it's still a bit of an indication. There was a decrease in the new growth for non-market. So how it works with the forest is that it's very complicated, but they can look at their future revenues from their trees, and that somehow impacts our growth assessments. So they've decided that, well, I don't know if they've decided, however they calculate it, their future revenue from their trees have decreased their values on some of their properties. So that decreased your growth taxes in that area, and so your market value is very is minimal change for the forest compared to the rest of the increases. And so how that impacts your managed forest is that basically your rate is very similar to last year. When all the other rates kind of went down, that one kind of just stayed at what it was last year. And just a slight increase to the ratio. It's 4.29 times the residential rate at this time, and last year it was 10.64 times.
So would it be appropriate? I mean, I'm happy to wait if that's what you think works, but
Yeah.
I'd like to see that increase substantially. I think the impact that that land has on us potentially is huge. Should there be a slide or some other problem on that land, and we need to be prepared for that, and that takes cash.
So, yeah, maybe through the mayor, I think maybe you might want to wait until a report comes back with an analysis on that. Just because if you have like a negative growth in there, the higher the rate is, the less, that's going to decrease your growth taxes.
Yeah.
And so it's going to impact your growth taxes you're going to get from your residential. And so it's good if I'll have a look at that during that report. But yeah.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, so just going back to the urban forest management plan and the tree bylaw. Yeah, I mean, we've seen an enormous amount of development pressure on the village of Cumberland, and there's still a lot of heavily treed areas that are privately owned that could be sold for development. And I think it's important that we get the tree bylaw in place before these lots come up for development and have an application on them. So that's sort of the pressure I'm feeling with getting something in. So maybe, Clayton, you could comment on sort of the work plan and how that would affect the 2022 work plan if we were to push through the tree bylaw. And Michelle, again, maybe come back, I guess, with some sources of funding for the 15,000. I was talking to MP Gord Johns recently as well, and he was saying that there's the parliamentary library where you can basically enter in whatever sort of grants that you're looking for, and it spits out a bunch of stuff. And oftentimes they're only maybe a couple $1,000 grants, but we could maybe pool some together and find one that applies, one or 5 that apply. So yeah, just to keep in mind around a funding source, but also if it does fall into the category of restart grants, that would be great.
Through your worship, yeah, so maybe I could just cover off some of the projects that I was making some notes here since the comment there. I think one of the challenges is really from staff, we're trying to, do some pretty high priority items in the next year. We have right now, in our plan, the transportation master plan, and obviously complete the active transportation plan. And so a couple of big projects in those two, in our arts, culture, and recreation master plan, development services modernization plan, and then the VCM1 review, public works, the Perseverance Watershed Initiative, which we were just talking about. And so I guess what we would have to do is come back and figure out exactly how we could manage, because there is already in the next 12 months. It isn't a big project, but it is one that certainly we want to make sure we do it right. We want to make sure that it is, the bylaw is what council is looking for, and there is, I don't think, and I think CFO had mentioned this, that there's definitely probably funding available. We could find the funding, and provide recommendations to council where that would be appropriate to utilize. Just trying to find a way that we can make sure we can do it. I just want to make sure that if when we're looking at all these other projects for the next 12 months, that we can actually accomplish this within a reasonable time. And if council wishes, certainly provide direction not to proceed with some of these or delay some of the other projects. But it's a tough balance between all those projects, even though that one doesn't seem like a really large one, but it adds up when we have all the other ones there. So it's certainly something we can come back to council with and provide some feedback and recommendations relating to that. And it may mean there's a bit of adjustments with some of the current projects, or maybe there's a different solution that we could look at. I don't know if we can answer it right now. I don't know actually how much it would take to, like, what the actual whole process is for us to take that on. The $15,000 is estimates based on what information that we've received, but I don't know if that that would be obviously a consultant coming in and assisting us. I don't know if because it is a bit of a cross-departmental one. We have our park side who's overseeing that, and obviously our development side. And so if either of you want to provide a little bit more information on that project.
Yeah, sure. I can start off, and I think that in terms of the Development Services Department and staff resources, that $15,000 estimate is based on there being quite a bit of staff time available, as well as some consultant time. And if that was to move up into 2022, a couple of options, just to get be a little more detail to add to what Clayton said. You could flip the priority with the VCMU1 project to review heritage protection, affordable housing potentially. But even so, you might also want to look at a bit of a higher budget for the tree protection bylaw to do it in 2022, because our vacation rental project, which is currently starting, will carry over into next year. So a lot of staff resources will still be taken up with that. So I would say a bit more of an increased budget would probably be needed for the tree protection bylaw if it was to come into this year and to be swapped potentially with that VCMU1 project. So just a couple of things that I thought might be useful for me to mention. Of course, there's probably a few other ways that you could potentially address it, but that's just a little bit more information about what we have in mind with the budget and the staff resources when we put together this recommendation.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I very much appreciate Councillor Kettler catching that. I understood it was in our strategic priorities. Well, it's been in the strategic priorities, I thought, for last year to finish the consultation on the tree bylaw. I believe the report was done in 2019. So then we were going to do the public consultation in 2020 or 2021, and now we're not even going to get to it until I think we need to start doing something about mitigating climate change in the village. And this is a very easy first step to doing that, to retaining some trees and requiring large shade trees. Yeah, we heard it in the budget. We've been talking about it forever, and I just think the report's been done for a couple of years and we need to move it forward. Having said that, not super keen on bumping the VCMU 1 zoning review, because I think that is also a priority for the village. We've heard from many people since the first 4-story building went in, and this next build with on the corner of Second, that there are concerns about what we're doing there. We need to look at that. So yeah, I would very much appreciate us finding some time to move those two things forward as soon as possible. Along with the vacation rental, God, let's not have that wait any longer.
Yeah, that is going to be very difficult to do with the amount of workload that our staff have, but we will discuss it. Okay?
I guess if we could ask, it's probably best just to provide a recommendation for our direction from council to staff, and we'll come back with some options there relating to that, because it wasn't part of the budget. If council wishes, we can certainly look at that as moving that item up there, and we can look at the various options there. So the report, the urban tree report it's active, and staff have been working through it, and all of the activities relating to our own internal parks, and I mean that public consultation, there was some challenges with COVID, because that was the time when we were going to begin that. So we, but it is actually in place and being implemented. But there are certainly parts of it that we haven't gotten very far along with some sections of it. But it is active and being implemented in various portions of both in their development services as well as our parks side. So I just want to let council know it is something that, certainly we can provide a report back on that. I can't recall the last time we provided an update on that, but we could certainly provide a report on where that is. But there has been quite a few activities relating to that.
Okay,
And
thank
it
you.
sounds like it's better for us to wait on first reading of the financial plan bylaw anyway to get the
Yes.
updated assessments.
The updated assessment, no, you don't. You can go through your financial plan readings and then just amend that portion of your financial plan. But if you do want to direct staff to come back with some options to bringing this project forward and work plan discussion, then I would recommend that you don't do anything with the financial plan tonight, but you give the first 3 readings of the water frontage tax, or all the frontage tax bylaws, and the user utility rate bylaws. You can give all 3 of those readings, and then just leave the financial plan bylaw unread at this time, and direct staff to come back with information on that.
Yeah.
And then we can just, you have some options after that. You can, make a decision at that meeting, how you feel about that. You can give readings to the bylaw as amended, or you can have some special meetings if you still want to keep moving the bylaw forward. You can organize special meetings after that, or you can just delay the readings and have it be adopted in 2022 in January.
So
Sorry,
yes,
sorry to interrupt. Would council wish just to hear, I know it's just a verbal update, but we could provide a verbal update on the forest implementation strategy, just where things are? Would that be, I don't know if that's helpful or not today, relating to those activities that we're talking about, because there is, like I said, there's quite a bit that has been underway. Do you want just a quick, brief update on that?
Right now?
We can do that, right? Yeah, we can do that right now. Well, if it's helpful, I just want to share some of the activities that have been happening.
yeah, I know, but it's not going to change us waiting.
No.
If
Yeah,
that's
we
the
might
way-
as well discuss it next
Okay.
time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Right,
think that
but
would be much better for us to deal with it all that and wait.
I thought I heard staff asking for direction from council.
Yes.
on-
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
Yes.
That staff come back to us with the implications, both financial and work plan implications, of moving the urban forest management plan, including the tree bylaw, into the 2022 year.
Second.
And maybe increasing the budget for it up to 20,000 because it sounds like.
They will come back with the report.
Right, okay.
Yes. Okay, everybody is aware of the motion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, then we can go, oh, sorry, Kevin?
Sorry, just a question on clarity on that. So it's kind of, the request is for two things. One is to figure out how to prioritize. So the first part is how to prioritize the tree protection bylaw, and then the second piece is an update on implementation status of the whole plan. Because the plan has, I think, 50 odd action items, and they're ranked in priority status, and so it's also that second piece. Is that what we're referring to?
We can just get away with moving the tree bylaw
Yeah.
forward. I think that would be good enough.
I don't
Okay.
think we want to create a whole bunch of more work of you reporting out on 50 items, no.
It's a comprehensive management plan, and there's a lot of work that I think staff, a lot of it's operational, around staff in my department and working operationally with planning and that type of thing. So, yeah, I just wasn't sure whether that was a piece. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay,
And then, through the mayor, if council can give first, second, third reading
Yeah.
to the other bylaws. Okay.
yes. Okay, on the next page, on page 4, the 6 bylaws are there. If somebody would like to take them one at a time and move them?
That council give first, second, and third reading of water frontage tax amendment bylaw number 1159/2021, sewer frontage tax amendment bylaw 1156/2021, storm frontage tax amendment bylaw 1158/2021, and that council give first, second, and third reading of water rates amendment bylaw number 1160/2021, sanitary sewer rates amendment bylaw number 1155/2021, solid waste rates amendment bylaw number 1157/2021.
Seconder?
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That council receive the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 1154/2021 report for information.
Move a seat.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
Okay, your final bylaw for tonight is, this is an annual bylaw that you see each year around this time, and really it's just a bylaw that approves short-term borrowing in the event that you may need cash flow between January, when your new expenses start coming into online, and July, when you collect your 2022 taxes. So far, we've really not had to use it for a number of years. We have some good cash flow, but it's always very good to have it in place. If anything happens and we have an emergency, then we can use that line of credit and get us through whatever it is. So again, we're just recommending $2 million for the revenue anticipation bylaw. And we can always come back with, like if something really horrible happened and we needed way more than that, we could come back with an amended bylaw and increase it.
Any questions? Then someone like to move?
I'll move the council give first, second, and third reading of the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 1154/2021.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. There's no
Thank you.
new business, notices, motions, and announcements. Question period. Please send your question by email to info@cumberland.ca using subject line question period.
Mayor Baird, we do have a few email questions.
Yes?
The first is regarding the couple of development applications, and the question is why for development permits and variance applications are coming to council for referrals without having all the required information included.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you had to say.
Why are development permits and variance applications coming forward to council for referral without having all the required information included?
Is that happening? Courtney, could you answer that question?
It's possible that the question is in relation to one of the applications on the agenda today, where we noted that there is a landscape requirement that isn't yet shown in the landscape plan, and that we were a screening requirement, and that we were going to ensure that was shown by the time it came back from referral to the APC back to council. Potentially, that could be the context of the question, and the answer would be it's a judgment call to not hold back applications for minor details such as that. And we're always sure to mention to council the situation so that it's out in the open. Yeah.
And so that will be in there when it goes to the APC. The information will be there.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay. Thank
The next question is regarding the changes to the procedure bylaw and having in-camera portion of a regular council meeting before the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, for in-camera meeting, is it not required to state the reasons to close the meeting? And the answer in short is yes, it is
Yes.
required. And the process we use is to have an agenda for an open meeting first, and council does close the meeting, an open meeting, and move into in-camera and states the reasons under the charter why it's closing. And we would
Yes,
do the
we
same
do
practice.
follow the rules of the charter. Yes.
And those agendas will be published in advance with the reasons for closing the meeting.
We are finding that it can be more convenient to meet before than after, especially if we have a delegation that's coming, instead of them waiting till 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. That's another reason why we're doing that.
Okay, and the third question about the discussion on the tree bylaw. If a tree bylaw is being considered, could not a committee be set up to start the process? And secondly, will the properties with trees get a tax credit?
Good question. Have not thought of that one. I don't know if any other municipality does a tax relief for a tree bylaw. My understanding that it's already in process. A lot of the work has been done. And so when it's presented to council, that could be something that we discuss.
More questions?
Okay. Close the meeting to the public.
All right, that
Okay.
council close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the review of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.